When it comes to the underworld, people often immediately think of violent gangs, bloody battles, and mysterious assassinations. But between the South American cartels and the Eastern European mafia, which is truly the more terrifying criminal force? One side controls territory with guns, ready to fight even the military. The other manipulates finances, controls politics without firing a single shot. Public brutality or power in the shadows. Which is the most effective way to dominate? If these two forces clashed, who would survive? And if they joined forces, who could stop them? Let's dive into the analysis and debates to uncover the truth about the two most powerful criminal organizations in the world. When talking about organized crime, most people immediately think of legendary mafia organizations or ruthless gangs that control the streets. But in reality, two forces have been shaping a massive influence, not just within national borders but on a global scale: the South American drug cartels and Eastern European criminal syndicates. One side controls a multi-billion-dollar drug industry, dominates territory through violence, and spreads terror with public executions. The other operates in the shadows, manipulating underground economies, pulling political strings from behind the scenes, and using sophisticated tactics to eliminate enemies. Despite their different operational methods, both organizations share a common origin: societal chaos. But how did they rise to become the most feared criminal forces in the world? What makes South American cartels nearly impossible to eradicate? Why has the Eastern European mafia survived for decades without being completely dismantled? And if compared, who is truly stronger? The history of these organizations is not just about gangs, it is a reflection of governmental weaknesses, institutional corruption, and the involvement of people we would never suspect. South American cartels didn't rise simply because they wanted to sell drugs but because the world demanded them. The enormous demand from the US, Europe, and other regions has turned cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine into commodities more valuable than oil. And when a product generates such massive profits, it inevitably spawns a powerful criminal industry behind it. Since the 1970s, when cocaine consumption surged in the US, small gangs in Colombia began reorganizing into drug empires, leading to the rise of Pablo Escobar's Medellin cartel. Medellin was not just a criminal organization, it was a shadow government, controlling entire cities, bribing police, buying off officials, and even funding political campaigns. When the Colombian government attempted to crack down, Escobar retaliated with mass bombings, assassinations of politicians, and even bringing down a commercial airplane to kill a single enemy. But Medellin was not the only name. After its downfall, the Cali cartel emerged, more sophisticated, operating like a financial corporation rather than a street gang. They bribed instead of killing, used money to control law enforcement rather than guns. Yet despite their different strategies, Cali and Medellin shared one thing: they could not exist without a corrupt government system backing them. By the 2000s, the world witnessed a major shift. Mexican cartels replaced Colombia in dominating the global drug trade. Under the leadership of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the Sinaloa cartel turned Mexico into a crucial transit hub, moving tons of drugs into the US annually. Other groups like the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, and Los Zetas also expanded. But instead of just trafficking, they fought for territory, triggering bloody wars that have led to over 350,000 deaths in Mexico alone. Cartels don't just deal in drugs. They engage in extortion, kidnapping, human trafficking, and even control border crossings with military force. In some parts of Mexico and Colombia today, governments no longer hold power, cartels do. This is what sets them apart from the Eastern European mafia. While cartels use open violence to control territory, the Eastern European mafia operates more discreetly, infiltrating financial and political systems instead of engaging in direct confrontations. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 created a massive power vacuum. Millions lost their jobs, law enforcement became ineffective, the military disintegrated, and most importantly, the KGB, once one of the world's most formidable intelligence agencies, lost its grip. But its agents, special forces operatives, And former officials didn't disappear, they turned to crime. This led to the rise of the Russian mafia, known as the Bratva. Unlike South American cartels, Eastern European mafias don't need to control streets with guns. They control entire economies, infiltrate governments, invest in banks, oil companies, and even legitimate corporations. In the 1990s, at one point, over 40% of Russia's economy was under mafia influence. Bratva is not alone. Albanian mafia groups, Serbian gangs, and Balkan crime syndicates also thrive, especially in arms trafficking and money laundering. Unlike South American cartels, they don't seek media attention. They don't need to hang their enemies' corpses from bridges to send a message, because they can make someone disappear without leaving a trace. So between South American cartels and the Eastern European mafia, who is truly more powerful? One relies on brute force to maintain control, while the other manipulates systems to exert influence. But if cartels can control borders and streets, mafias can control politics, banks, and global financial flows. However, the bigger question is, if these two forces clashed, who would win? Could the cartel's violence overpower the Eastern European mafia? Or could the mafia use its financial power and political connections to control the cartels? We will continue analyzing this in the next section, delving deeper into how each organization operates, from their structural hierarchy, recruitment methods, to how they ensure absolute loyalty within their ranks. If you think violence is the only thing keeping these organizations alive, you may need to reconsider. In the underworld, power doesn't come from violence alone but from how an organization is structured, operated, and maintained. A cartel can kill hundreds in a single night, but if its system is not tightly controlled, an internal purge could bring it down in days. A mafia may control the underground economy, but without absolute loyalty from its members, its sophistication could become its greatest weakness. So between the South American cartels and Eastern European crime syndicates, who has the more resilient operational system? South American cartels function like paramilitary forces. Everything in their structure revolves around controlling territory and protecting drug profits. At the top is El Jefe, the supreme boss, the one who makes the final decisions. However, after witnessing numerous cartel collapses due to the capture of their leaders, organizations like Sinaloa and CJNG have started adopting a decentralized power model, where multiple leaders share control to avoid easy takedowns. Below the top leadership are plaza bosses, who oversee specific regions, manage production, smuggling, bribing law enforcement, and eliminating any traitors. Beneath them are the mercenary groups, killers willing to fight military forces, execute anyone on command, and carry out massacres to send messages to rivals. Lastly, there is the money laundering network, where cartels funnel billions of dollars into legitimate businesses to clean their illicit earnings. But what truly keeps cartels alive is not just their organizational structure, it's absolute loyalty. Loyalty to a cartel is not a matter of ethics but survival. A traitor doesn't just lose their life, their entire family and friends might be hunted down as well. Cartels enforce loyalty through terrifying means: torture, public executions, and even kidnapping the families of those suspected of betrayal. Groups like Los Zetas go even further, training their members as military-grade special forces, turning them into killers devoid of emotion. However, no matter how violent or disciplined, cartels have a fatal flaw: internal instability. Since cartel power is tied to territorial control, whenever a leader is captured or killed, factional infighting erupts, leading to violent power struggles that weaken the organization. Since 2010, Mexico has witnessed multiple cartels fragment into smaller groups, losing their original strength due to internal purges. In contrast, the Eastern European mafia operates under a completely different system. There are no street wars, no public displays of power that make leaders easy targets. Instead of a single dominant boss, Eastern European syndicates operate through a power council, where different mafia groups form alliances to jointly control the underground economy. This model ensures long-term survival. No single individual's downfall can collapse the organization. Unlike cartels, which must control physical territory, the Eastern European mafia controls finances, markets, And politics. They don't need an army to defend their power. They use money to control entire systems. Instead of shooting people on the streets, they employ subtle assassination methods such as poisoning, staged car accidents, or orchestrated disappearances. A politician or businessman who opposes them can vanish without a trace. What truly makes the Eastern European mafia stronger than cartels is how they maintain loyalty. Unlike cartels, where loyalty is enforced through fear, the mafia operates under an unwritten code known as Vori v Zakon, the thieves' law. Those who join the mafia do not just become members of an organization, they become part of an ideology. A code of honor where betrayal is not just a crime, it is an unthinkable act in the underworld. Moreover, Eastern European mafia groups don't rely solely on criminal activities for income. They invest in financial corporations, own real estate companies, control shipping ports, and maintain close ties with corrupt politicians. This allows them to launder money more efficiently, operate legally, and most importantly, avoid law enforcement and media scrutiny. So when comparing their organizational structures and ability to maintain power, who is stronger? South American cartels have the advantage of raw violence, possessing their own armies and heavily armed networks capable of fighting government forces. However, they are overly dependent on territorial control and leadership figures, making them vulnerable to fragmentation when key figures are lost. Meanwhile, the Eastern European mafia does not require specific territories or central figures to function. It operates like an invisible network, adaptable to any change, capable of manipulating global financial systems while remaining undetected. Yet, the ultimate question remains unanswered. If cartels and the Eastern European mafia were to go to war, who would win? Could cartel violence overpower an organization that manipulates politics and the global economy? Or could the mafia use its financial influence to control even the most violent organizations? In the next section, we will delve deeper into the brutality and global influence of these two forces. If you believe cartels are the most infamous killers, you may not yet understand how the Eastern European mafia can make their enemies disappear without a single drop of blood spilled. When it comes to organized crime, there are two ways to control power. One is through open violence, spreading fear with mass killings, beheadings, and brutal street wars. The other is through silent manipulation, orchestrating assassinations, laundering billions, and pulling the strings of the underground economy from the shadows. South American cartels have chosen the first approach, while the Eastern European mafia has mastered the second. But if compared, who is truly more dangerous? Who holds greater influence over the world? South American cartels are not just drug trafficking organizations. They control a vast criminal empire that extends to arms smuggling, kidnapping for ransom, human trafficking, and even political influence. Their brutality goes far beyond executing traitors, it extends to entire communities. Cartel attacks can destabilize an entire city, turning civilians into collateral damage. Groups like CJNG and Los Zetas do not hesitate to confront government forces, using armored vehicles, heavy artillery, and even drones to attack their enemies. The Mexican government has been at war with the cartels since 2006. Yet with over 350,000 deaths and no end in sight, it is clear that eliminating the cartels is nearly impossible. What makes cartels even more terrifying is how they control local populations. They don't just kill to intimidate, they use violence to maintain order. Some regions in Mexico and Colombia have become cartel strongholds where law enforcement dares not enter. Anyone who defies them faces unimaginable torture, being skinned alive, burned to death, or hung from bridges as a warning. The Sinaloa cartel has carried out public executions to send messages to the government, while CJNG has been known to use industrial meat grinders to dispose of those who oppose them. This brutality serves a dual purpose: maintaining internal discipline and sending a clear message: no one defies the cartel and survives. However, such public displays of violence have a drawback. Because of their notoriety, South American cartels are constantly hunted by law enforcement. Agencies like the FBI, DEA, and elite special forces from multiple countries have spent decades dismantling these organizations. Notorious figures like Pablo Escobar and El Chapo have been killed or imprisoned. Yet their arrests did not dismantle the cartels. When one leader falls, another rises, and the cycle of violence continues. Meanwhile, the Eastern European mafia does not need open violence. Yet its influence is so vast that it is nearly impossible to measure. If South American cartels control the streets, the Eastern European mafia controls financial markets, economies, and political systems. They don't need large-scale killings because they can make enemies disappear without a trace. Poisonings, staged car accidents, and suspicious suicides are their trademarks. There may be no blood spilled in the streets, but those who oppose them simply cease to exist. Consider some of the high-profile assassinations linked to the Eastern European mafia. Alexander Litvinenko, a former Russian spy, was poisoned with polonium-210, an extremely rare radioactive substance that can only be produced in military laboratories. He didn't die instantly but suffered in agony for days. Or take Boris Nemtsov, an anti-corruption politician, who was shot near the Kremlin. Yet no one could identify the true mastermind behind his murder. The Eastern European mafia does not need street wars because it can manipulate entire systems from within. What makes them even more dangerous is not their assassinations but their control over global finance. They can launder billions through European banks, invest in legitimate companies, and even hold shares in multinational corporations. These legal businesses not only help them clean dirty money but also give them influence over politics and the world economy. Interpol once estimated that over 40% of Russia's underground economy was controlled by the mafia. And this number continues to rise. However, the Eastern European mafia has its weaknesses. Because they operate in secrecy, a single exposed link can put an entire network at risk. Some financial investigations have uncovered money laundering schemes connected to Russian mafia groups, leading to the arrests of high-ranking figures. But unlike cartels, where an arrest can spark violent infighting, the mafia's decentralized power structure allows them to quickly adapt and continue operations without major disruptions. So if we compare the two, who is more dangerous? In terms of raw violence, the South American cartels are unrivaled. But in terms of global influence, the Eastern European mafia is far more insidious. A cartel can control a city, but the mafia can control an entire government. A cartel can earn billions from drugs, but the mafia can launder that money and integrate it into the global economy. Yet, the ultimate question remains: what happens if these two forces collide? Can cartels use their military-like firepower to crush the Eastern European mafia? Or will the mafia use its financial and political power to manipulate the cartels? One side can wage war against armies, while the other can plunge an entire nation into financial chaos. One side is built on warriors, the other on strategists. In the next section, we will explore the hypothetical scenario of a direct confrontation between these two criminal empires. When the cartel and the mafia go to war, who will be the last one standing? This will not just be a battle of firepower but a war of intelligence, money, and unseen tactics in the shadows. If the South American cartels are the rulers of the streets, controlling territory through blood and firepower, then the Eastern European mafia are the masterminds in the shadows, using money and influence to dominate the entire underground economy. One side wages war against the military, killing hundreds overnight to protect its territory. The other does not need open violence but can manipulate entire political and banking systems through transactions that leave no trace. If these two forces were to clash, who would be the last one standing? Could the cartels use their military strength to crush the Eastern European mafia? Or would the mafia use money and strategy to control the cartels from within? First, let's discuss the advantages each side would have in this war. The South American cartels possess something the Eastern European mafia does not: direct military power. Organizations like Sinaloa, CJNG, and Los Zetas command real armies, equipped with heavy weaponry, armored vehicles, and even bomb-equipped drones to attack their enemies. They have tens of thousands of gunmen willing to fight to the death, capable of attacking military bases or besieging entire cities if necessary. Meanwhile, the Eastern European mafia does not operate like an army. does not engage in open warfare, and instead relies on intelligence networks, covert assassinations, and financial control. However, cartels also have a major weakness: they are too dependent on territorial control. A strong cartel thrives when it dominates key drug trafficking regions, ensuring steady supply routes from South America to the US and Europe. If these routes are disrupted, or if their intermediaries are eliminated, the cartel will quickly weaken. This is precisely where the Eastern European mafia can strike. They do not need to kill hundreds to seize control of territories like cartels. But they can manipulate financial systems, control banks, and sever cartel money laundering pipelines, making it impossible for them to sustain operations. A plausible scenario is that the Eastern European mafia does not directly confront the cartels but silently attacks the most crucial links in their system. Imagine this. A cartel needs to launder billions in drug money and must rely on banks or legitimate companies to clean the funds. The mafia does not need to battle the cartels with bullets, they only need to control those banks. Use hidden transactions to cut off the cash flow, rendering the cartels unable to pay their gunmen, buy more weapons, or bribe local governments to protect their trafficking routes. A cartel without money is like an army cut off from its ammunition. Sooner or later, it will collapse. But what happens if the cartels discover that the Eastern European mafia is behind these financial manipulations? Cartels are not fools. They understand that if they cannot outmaneuver an opponent strategically, they can always revert to their most effective method: killing their enemies. Cartels have no qualms about assassinating banking executives, slaughtering the families of traitors, or kidnapping and torturing anyone who dares interfere with their financial operations. If the Eastern European mafia tries to cripple cartel finances, the cartels could retaliate by launching direct attacks on businessmen, politicians, or even the financial masterminds of the mafia. Such a war would not take place on the streets but in government offices, corporate boardrooms, and international banking systems. However, the Eastern European mafia is not easily destroyed. If the cartels resort to brute force, the mafia will respond with cybercrime, intelligence warfare, and sophisticated assassinations. While the cartels kill with guns and explosives, the mafia can strike in ways that are nearly undetectable: poisoning, cyber attacks to collapse cartel financial networks, or even manipulating international law enforcement to intensify global crackdowns on cartel leaders. A politically connected mafia could use governments to eliminate the cartels without ever lifting a gun. So if the cartels and the Eastern European mafia were to face off, who would win? In an open battlefield confrontation, the cartels would have the advantage. They have private armies, a ruthless force ready to kill without hesitation. But if this were a war of intelligence, finance, and strategy, the Eastern European mafia would have the upper hand. They do not just have money, they have the power to manipulate entire political systems. A cartel may control a city, but the mafia can control an entire government. However, the real question is not who would win, but what would happen if these two forces collaborated instead. Imagine a cartel with military strength merging with a mafia that dominates finance and politics. Imagine an organization that controls the streets through violence while also controlling banks and governments through money. If the cartels and the Eastern European mafia do not battle but instead join forces to create a true empire of power, it would be the worst nightmare for any government. Could this actually happen? In reality, there are already signs of cooperation. Some cartels have partnered with the Eastern European mafia for money laundering, arms deals, and expanding drug markets into Europe. This suggests that in the future, instead of competing, they may find ways to coexist, divide power, and build a global criminal superstructure. But this also raises an even bigger question. Is there any force capable of stopping them? The US government spent decades hunting down El Chapo. Yet the Sinaloa cartel continues to operate. Interpol has dismantled some of the Eastern European mafia's money laundering networks. Yet their influence continues to expand. If the cartels and the Eastern European mafia truly unite, is there any law enforcement agency in the world powerful enough to take them down? In the next section, we will explore the future of organized crime, whether the cartels and the Eastern European mafia can be eradicated or if they will continue to evolve, becoming stronger than ever before. If you think organized crime has already reached the peak of its power, you may not be prepared for what is coming next. South American cartels or the Eastern European mafia. Who is truly more powerful? One side dominates through sheer firepower, while the other operates with deep, calculated strategy. If the cartels can shake an entire nation with bullets and bloodshed, the mafia can control its economy without anyone realizing. But the most terrifying scenario is not when they're at war, but when they find common ground. When violence merges with wealth. When underground armies join forces with financial power. Is there any force capable of stopping them? Share your thoughts. Who do you think is the most dangerous criminal organization? If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss our next thrilling content.